So it was that conviction that every time I did something wrong, it was almost God saying like, "Hey, like, come back, like, come here," you know.
Mm.
And it was amazing because every time I would go into Root Church, I felt a feeling that I didn't feel anywhere else.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh, where I bring people from different walks of life to share their stories and journeys of life, with the hopes that you're able to take away some lessons learned, whether or not you're from their industry, or their background, or even understand. Really hope that you're able to gather some great lessons learned from each of these guests. And on today, we have another amazing guest, Adrian. Adrian, I met through just following his YouTube channel. I encountered his podcast, his YouTube channel, and he's out of the South Florida area and is attending VU Church, which is a church that I look up to and attend VUCon every year now for the last couple years. And he is an awesome man of faith. And so we're going to have an awesome faith conversation on his story and his journey of faith. And you're in store for an amazing, awesome podcast interview. We went in deep, and I really hope that you enjoy this conversation and learning more about Adrian. And so let's go into the interview with Adrian. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. Really excited to have you on.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it. I was actually when you emailed me,
Yeah,
man, I was excited because I mean, as you know, I do this podcast to be able to, let others share their stories.
yeah.
And I'm just excited because now I get to share a little bit of mine.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's so funny. Like I came across you on YouTube. It was a suggested video, and I loved hearing your actually went through your past videos, not even your recent stuff. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And your email is on there. I'm like, let me just connect. And you also go to VU Church, which was awesome to hear too, because I go to the VUCon every year.
Yeah, man. It's a completely it's an amazing experience. It's like no other. When people ask me about WooCon and Woo Church, first of all, just Woo Church, I think it's amazing. There's lives are being transformed, and it's just so beautiful to see. And there's definitely revival
Yeah.
happening because man, these locations we're getting more than ever, and just so many people just entering those doors, and they're just curious, about that name of Jesus. But then WooCon, right? Like WooCon, it's a whole completely different magnitude. We're talking about, this happening in an arena.
Yeah.
I think that this is just the beginning. There's no limit to what God is doing. So that's even super cool that you found me on YouTube,
Yeah.
but that we also, we have that in common, through
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. It's so cool. That church has been a blessing in my life, and that's one of the church services that I can never miss watching online.
Yeah, man.
So, so I really wanted to start off this conversation. I know we're going to talk about a variety of different topics today, but I really wanted to start off really unpacking your faith journey. When we first talked, you gave me a glimpse of it, and I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share that with our listeners. I don't know where you want to start, but let's start talking about your faith journey a little bit.
Yeah, man. Let's start with the not so good, right? Because I like doing this because the reason why I like doing this is because a lot of times God is so close to us, right? He's close to us, he's close to the brokenhearted. And when we're deep down in those valleys and we're in what we feel is like the mud, it's when a lot of times we feel the loneliest.
Mm,
And so I want to start where, I feel like I was suffering the most in life. I had just gone out of a really bad breakup, and I did what, I shouldn't have done, right? I went out into the world, started partying, started drinking, definitely hanging out the wrong group of crowd, like it was just the wrong group. They were just doing all sorts of stuff that I should not be doing. And I would never do this before. Um, And it was just this thing where every week I was just doing it. It started off on Wednesday and it ended on Sunday. And then we just kept doing it every week. And I remember, I would say about 5 years ago, give or take around there. I had these friends at the time, and they were like, "Let's go to Vu." And I remember when this is Vu at the city location, they were like, "Let's just go to Vu." And I'm
Mm.
like, "What's Vu?" Like I've never heard of that name. Like I don't even know what Vu is. So turns out it ended up being a church, right? And I remember going into Vu and I'm like, man, this is nice. Like, all the lights. I come from doing videos and all this. I was intrigued from the moment I walked in. I'm like, wow, like this is nice. And I believe it was Pastor Rich speaking that day. But if I'm honest with you, I I I'm not able to remember what Pastor Rich was saying because I was just weeping the
Mm.
whole time I was there. I was crying, and I remember just asking God. I always did believe in God. I've seen my parents to this day. My parents pray every morning. My dad reads his word every single morning, and so I've always believed in God. I've always been a believer. But I feel like there was never that relationship, right? There was never that I can speak to you whenever, and I know you're listening. It was never that. It was more of a very formal prayer, and it was basically like, man, I really do hope that you hear what I'm trying to tell you right now. And so I go in here and I remember just asking God, like, why am I so overwhelmed? Like, why am I crying so much? What is this? I just couldn't stop. I was a mess that day. And I started going, obviously that intrigued me, but it was never, to be honest, it wasn't a life-changing experience to where I said, I want more of this and I need it every week and I need to be around Jesus and I want to. No, it wasn't that. I started going to VU like on and off, and I was here and I was there and I would party every once in a while, but then I would go back to VU on Sundays. And it was, I was in that era, I guess, in that season of my life, and I thought I was perfectly fine with it. I'm like, I could go to VU on Sundays and then I'll just party, but I'll make time for church. Like I'm okay. And it turns out, full circle moment. One of my basketball teammates, he was going to VU a lot, and he's always gone to church. And it was one of my high school teammates at the time, and he's like, "Man, like let's go to VU," and I'm like, "Let's do it." Like, and now I know what VU is, so we could actually go this time, and I know what I'm getting into. So we go, and great. It was a great sermon, and I loved it. And then he goes, "Hey, do you know who the film director is? Because I do film." And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "No, I don't." He's like, "Hey, it's actually Ray." And Ray used to be my high school coach when I played basketball. And so it was a full circle moment. And I'm like, man, if this isn't God, I don't know what is.
Mm.
So I basically just started speaking with him. He's like, man, like you should, just come through, just check out film. Like it's no pressure, just check it out. I ended up loving it. I joined the film team, and ever since I joined that film team, it's been nonstop. It's like I want Jesus, and yes, I love serving Jesus and doing film, but I love this. Like I love being able to come into the house of God and just be able to be around other people, right? That love him as well and want more of him. And just the fact that we get to do life together in this amazing community that VU has been great. And so I thought that was all, right? Like I thought that was the end all be all for my life. I'm like, man, I get to serve Jesus. I'm going to church every Sunday. This is great. I'm just going to be a very good cinematographer in life, and then I get to serve Jesus at the same time. This is great. I thought those were my plans for my life. That was my vision for my life. And VUCon comes around, which I'm glad we're talking about. VUCon comes around, and this is where it gets really good, because I think that people need to hear how transformational VUCon is, because I'm one of the thousands of testimonies that happen every year at VUCon. And this is, man, like God's presence is really felt in that building. And VUCon comes around, and I remember Judah Smith preaching. And I think by far, if you guys have not checked it out, Judah Smith, that sermon that he preached at VUCon 2 years ago, I think it's one of the best sermons teachings that he has ever done. And he got off stage, and I was so tired that day. I was filming the whole day, and I was so tired that I even told my little group of friends that I was there with, I'm like, hey, like, I'm gonna meet you guys after VuCon, and I'm gonna just stay here in the back because I am tired. Like, I don't even want to walk no more. So I remember worship comes on, right? And as worship comes on, now I know it was a spirit tucking me. And he was like nudging me, like, hey, like, go be with your friends, like, go be with the group that you came with. And so I let them know. I'm like, man, you know what? I want to go worship with you guys. Like, let me go sit where you guys are at. So I go, and I'm one of these people that when worship comes on, man, I love just hands raised, like I'm in there, I'm in the spirit. And for the first time ever, I was kind of like very like to myself, and I was saying, God, just give me a vision of my life, how you want my life to be, the purpose that you have for my life. And I remember just saying this out loud, and this is all while worship is going on. And he showed me a vision, right? And it was these the speaker, and I was like recording behind the speaker. And it was a speaker, in front of what seemed like the Arena. So it was pretty cool, but I just felt very unsatisfied with that vision. I felt like there was more. Um, and then I just felt like I kept asking him, I'm like, God, is there more? Like, please just give me more. And it was something that it was like the first thing, the moment I said it, just the first thing that just came into my head. And it was like he told me, he's like, hey, you're supposed to be in front of that camera, not only behind it.
Mm.
And I open my eyes, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way that God wants me to preach his good word. Like, who am I? Like, I, I barely read the Bible like me. Like, there's no way. And I open my eyes, and sure enough, the moment I open my eyes, so do you ever know when someone's kind of like staring at you and you're not looking at them, but they're staring at you for some
Yeah.
reason, kind of feel it? So I opened my eyes, and I felt someone staring at me, and I looked to my left, and it's Pastor Adrian, our location pastor at South Miami. And he's like beelining to me. Like, he's not looking all around. He's someone that's very social. He likes saying hi to people. No, no, no.
Mhm.
He was not looking around. Like, he was coming straight to me. He doesn't tell me a word, and he just starts praying over me. This is right after I just received that vision. He starts praying for me, sorry. And this is the first time I ever felt what I feel was the Holy Spirit, because I felt so hot inside. Like, my knees were hot. My body was hot. I was just going through it. I'm like, man, what is this? This is like Wu 4 or 5 years ago again, like, what is
Mm.
going on? And it was after that night that I was so sure, that God just revealed to me that he has more for my life than just being behind the camera, but rather use that camera to preach his good word wherever I go. He's going to use that camera to take me to places. But that's just going to be a tool for what he has for my life. And ever since then, again, it's been a snowball effect, open doors and opportunities. And it has led me, to now, to present time in my life. And that's just what I'm doing right now. I every Sunday, uh, I'm so thankful because Pastor Adrian has basically just taken me under his wing. And he every Sunday I basically shadow him, and I see what he does, and I'm learning from him. And he's been so graceful and patient with me. So I'm just very thankful for that. And here we are now.
That's awesome. I did have a couple questions on your faith journey so far. You mentioned initially you got invited to go to VU, right?
Yeah.
How old were you by the way then?
This was 4 or 5 years ago. So
Okay.
this was, I was 23, 22 at the time,
Okay.
give
Okay.
or take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was it that kept bringing you back?
You know what? Like I said, I was always a believer.
Yeah.
It was that instant conviction every time I would go out and party and drink.
Hmm.
It was that conviction, which again I didn't know at the time, right? Like,
Hmm.
I would just tell myself, man, I feel like I should be going back to church. Um, so it was that conviction that every time I did something wrong, it was almost God saying, like, hey, like, come back, like, come here. And it was amazing because every time I would go into Blue Church, I felt a feeling that I didn't feel anywhere else. That the
Mm.
party couldn't take the drinking, the hanging out with the wrong crowd. None of that filled that void like when I stepped into Blue Church and I felt God. And I was just trying to fill it with the wrong things in my life. But Jesus was saying, hey, no, I can do it. Come back to me. And it just kept me coming back. It's like I just wanted more and more of Jesus.
Yeah, that's such a big thing today is that people around our age, they're trying to find fulfillment in things that just continue to keep them empty, right? There's that temporary feeling that they get, right, through whatever it might be. Um whatever it might be, but at the end of the day or at the end of the night or the next morning, they're still feeling that emptiness
Mm.
and they need something to fill that emptiness because that is not working out.
It's not working out. And
Mhm.
you know what, Cameron, a lot of times, and it's like you say, it's very temporary.
Mhm.
And those fleshly desires, they feel so good in the moment. And then right after, it's like, man, what have I done? And it's not right. And to this day, I mean, you and I both, I'm sure we still deal with fleshly desires.
For sure.
um I like being transparent, and I am very blunt. To this day, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, man, I don't want to read the word. Like,
Mhm.
I just want to just be able to get up and just go to the gym or just do something else besides have to read the word or just have alone time with God. It's just in our nature. We were born sinners.
Mhm.
And Pastor Rich says something one time. He's like, you don't have to ever teach a baby to say no. Just the baby knows how to say no. You got to teach it to do the right thing, but we're just born into it. And so, again, those desires, they don't stop. It's just in us. But the good thing is that we do have a good God, that He is very, very patient with us. He has a lot of mercy and grace over our life. So even over those fleshly desires, the good news is that He overcomes all of that. So
Mhm.
that's why, we just don't have to worry about, we could just keep fighting those fleshly desires and just let God take care of the rest.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's that also misconception is that when you give your life to Jesus or you become saved, that you're going to be walking on clouds, right?
Yeah.
And how I was like, why is life so much more difficult? Is because the enemy is coming after us harder than ever and
Yeah.
stronger than ever. Uh he's trying to come after us even more.
Yeah, man.
And that's really what the faith journey is about is building stronger every day, doing things what we can do to continue to hone in on our faith, have a deeper relationship with God. And one thing I never realized is that just like how you have relationship with your friends or whoever or your family, you have to spend that much time with God, right?
It's very, and I never thought about this, Cameron, but
Hmm.
before, I gave my life to Christ, right? It was the best day of my life. Man, that is the best decision you will ever make.
Hmm.
Giving your life to Christ and going down in the water, coming up someone new. But I thought that same thing. I'm like, this is the best day of my life. Like, man, everything is gonna
Hmm.
go my way because now I've given my life to Christ. And it wasn't like that. Like, but man, that alone time, right? Like just making sure that you're spending that alone time with God. Um, it's so meaningful, right? Because a lot of times we think of God as a genie in a bottle. We go like,
Hmm.
for example, Cameron, just so the people can paint a picture in their head. What if I were to go up to you right now and I would have been like, hey, Cameron, I actually want to be a huge cinematographer in the industry. I want to preach the good word of God everywhere I go. And I tell you all my desires, and without you even saying a word back, before you could even say nothing, I say, thanks, man, and I walk away. that's what I'm sure sometimes God feels, because we go up to him in prayer, right? And we
Hmm.
say, God, I need this. God, please do this for me. This isn't going my way. And we go, Amen, and we walk away. And I'm sure God's like, hey, what about me? When can
Hmm.
I speak to you? When can I do something in your life? And God is a gentleman. It's in Matthew 7:7. If we seek him, he will be there. And if we knock, he will be there. But now vice versa. He will knock back into our lives. We just have to make sure we open the door for him, right? We have to make sure that we're making time to listen to what he has to say over our lives. And you'll be surprised that alone time that I spend with God, sometimes I don't even talk. I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, you want to hear God's voice? It's much more simple than you think.
Hmm.
Just be quiet and let him speak. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised with what he does with that alone time, you
Yeah,
know?
and that's so hard to incorporate in your life because even I struggle it like to this day is where like spending time with God or devotion or whatever that might look like is seen as a task and not really like a part of the journey. It's not like it's always seen as like a task.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
and it's like it goes back right to our desires,
Hmm.
right? Uh Pastor DC, she was actually preaching yesterday.
Hmm.
Um and she said something, and man, it just stood out to me. So they're preaching right now on matura. So they're speaking on relationships and all of that. And like she was saying it, some sometimes we don't want to, even with our partners, right? Like we may get in arguments here and there, and the last thing we want to do is sometimes even honor our partner. Like sometimes relationships go days, weeks without honoring each other. And again, it's because in our fleshly desires, we don't even think of it. But
Hmm.
she makes sure, she was saying it yesterday, she's like, something I do always make sure is that I tell Rich how much I love him and who he is. And those things that are from God, we have to seek him in order to do them. We can't just do them out of our own will, because it's never like that.
Hmm.
Like it's always out of God. The way we love others is because of God's love for us. He is love. It's the way we have patience with others is because God has provided that. So what I'm trying to get to here is, a lot of times when we do have that alone time with God, or we're making sure that we're spending time with God, just make sure that just make sure that it's never out of a wrong place, saying, okay, God, I spent time with you, now what do you have to give me? No, it's never about that. It's just about you making sure that in your purpose, you're making sure that you're spending time with God, and it's meaningful, and you're doing it for his glory, not because you're just trying to make space for him for the sake of it, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. Well, thank you for sharing your story and your faith journey. I'm sure for those listening, or even those that are not even of faith, or have questions on it, I'm sure it's been inspiring for those listening to hear your faith journey so far.
Man, I would hope so, because the reason why
Yeah.
I even started the YouTube channel, right, was
Hmm.
it was for people to share their testimonies. There's power in the testimony.
Hmm.
And a lot of people could relate to all of our testimonies. I could probably relate to yours in some aspect of it. And so I really do hope that it touches someone, to just step into church for the first time, right? Like
Hmm.
give give Jesus that try whenever you want to, just whenever you feel it, just give Jesus that try. I could 1,000% guarantee you that it will be the best decision you have ever made.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would say go in it with no expectations because
Yeah.
you never know the work that God can do in your life just by stepping into the doors of a church for the
Mm.
first time. You never know. Because I've seen even right now as we speak, like I never knew. I was always trying to find a home church for the last couple months,
Mm.
and now I'm on a launch team for a church plant in the area. And
You see,
I
like
would have
God,
never I would have never thought that would have ever happened.
you would have never thought. And it's even me, like I stepped into the film room. I'm like, like let me just check it out. I'll check it out, and look what God, does in your life. I say it all the time. God's gonna put you in rooms that
Mm-hmm.
you never thought you'll be and in front
Mm-hmm.
of people you never thought you'll speak to, but God sees things that we don't, and he knows things that we don't too,
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. So I wanted to unpack a little bit more of your story. I know you mentioned you're into film and photography, and I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about that. So, what really sparked your interest in that area, and how far back does that go for you?
Man, that goes from when I was a little kid, man. Like I
Wow.
was I was 8 years old, and my dad, to this day, he has always I always tell people when they visit my house, I'm like, listen, if you don't like photos, don't step in here. Because my dad is one of those people that he'll meet you for the first time. He's like, selfie, and he has this funny like just flip up camera that is like, I feel like it's from like back like 2005 or something like that. It's like an Olympus, and he just takes photos with everyone.
Wow.
And that's where my story with the camera started. It was when I was 8 years old. He would always take photos, and I told him, I'm like, I want a camera like this. And he got me my first camera. It was an Nikon. And ever since he got me that first camera, there's been something, and I guess from seeing him, there's been something that I've just fell in love with, and it's creating something out of nothing.
Mm,
Um, Even more than photos, I've loved video, just being able to see the vision, right? But not have anything on it. And you go into your room and you edit, and I don't know, and you come up with this whole story for someone, from what God has helped you put together. It's where it all started for me. And again, I'm so thankful, right? Because this just goes to show that even when we're not even thinking about it, God already knew, right? He already knew that he was going to use that camera in my life to get me where he wants to get me. And so this started from when I was a little kid, right? Like that love for my camera, and he's still using that camera to this day, to this
yeah.
day. So
That's awesome. And you're not only using your gifts in the church to serve in the church, but you're also using it as a business as well.
yeah, yeah. So now I'm stepping into weddings.
Mm-hmm.
And before, just funny enough, it's like we say, you really don't know what God is gonna do in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I used to just record basketball players. I love basketball, so I just would record basketball players, NBA players in their off season. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that was great. Like that's what I wanted to do. And every time someone would ask me, "Hey, do you do like weddings?" I'm like, no, I like that is not for me. Absolutely not. I would, pass you to someone that does it, but that's not in my plans. Like
Yeah.
that's not my calling. So, and now I'm stepping into weddings, and it's so beautiful because again, it all comes back to him. Just it now to me is so beautiful just seeing two people unite as one, and just seeing the fruits of what he has done in their lives, and being able to capture that for them. And not only capture that, but make it a memory that they will see and they will show their grandkids. And it's a generational thing now.
Mm,
It's not really on this lifetime, but that's I feel that's one of the callings that he has over my life. Like I said, to use that camera, um, to just show the love, show who he is, and show what he has done in relationships and in couples, and pass it down through generations.
mm. Yeah. So how did you get started on that entrepreneurship journey with starting your own business?
If I want to be honest with you, I just didn't like someone bossing me around. And I've had so many jobs. I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, I've had like fixing cars. I've been a cart attendant, like
Yep.
pushing carts outside. Yeah, like a cart attendant. I've worked in with technology like the just laptops and all that. I've worked, man, in everything. I've worked in restaurants and everything.
Mm,
And so many times back then I'm like, man, I just really don't like someone just telling me, hey, like do this, do that, do this, do that, when I know my potential. Like, and I guess it comes from like, just an ignorant way of thinking, right? Because you can learn something wherever you go. But when
yeah.
I was younger, man, that was just my way of thinking. And um which something that I forgot even to say in my story. I used to work at Nike, and I love Nike. I love them as a brand. I'm wearing Nike right now. But I was working at Nike, and I was just I was saying, that's when I was telling myself, man, there's something more, there's something more
Mm,
for my life. And I remember God told me one day, I've been wanting to actually leave Nike for a long time now because I wanted to do this full time, take care of clients and freelance full time. And God told me one day, hey, it's time. Just trust me, like it's time. And I remember that day, same day, I put in my 2 weeks. Cameron, I'm telling you, bro, I had no clients. I had
mm,
lost all my clients from when I used to do freelancing back then. I lost everything. I barely had money in my bank account. Like it was bad. And I remember getting in that car one day, and first thing I did, I turned the car on, and first thing I did, I'm like, God, this is in your hands because I have nothing in mind, and
mm,
I think that's our life all the time, right? Like, God, this is in your hands because I can't hold the weight of what is in my life. So just God, take care of this. And sure enough, um, believe it or not, I had people that I hadn't talked to in years say, hey, like, can we do a video? And man, people were reaching out to me from everywhere. And that's how he used my business to just come off the ground. And ever since then, snowball effect. I've just been nonstop, you know. So it's really about just putting it in his hands, you know.
mhm.
Even at VU, sometimes when I pray for people, after prayer, I tell them, look, whatever you're experiencing in life, whatever you got going on, and we're kind of going off the tracks here, but I do think that it's important because I tell them all the time, whatever you have going on, and we all have things going on in our life. Pastor says it's simple but not easy.
Mm,
Just put it in his hands and truly let go. You may still feel worried because again, that's our desires and that's who we are, but just really put it in his hands and just know that our weight is nothing to him. He got it. Like if your steps are already sorry, if your steps are already planted and they're directed, why worry? He knows what he's doing, you know? So that's where the entrepreneur life started when I left Nike and I saw what God did. I said, "Oh, okay, like this is where He wants me to go." You know,
mhm. Yeah, that's I like how you brought that up because even I experienced this is you want your whole life journey planned out, right? 30, I'm gonna do this. 32, I want to be at this X, Y, and Z.
yeah,
35, I want to be here. 40 there, and we start to plan this out, but not realizing that it's not even in our control, right? Who knows where we're gonna be in the next 5 years?
who knows?
Um, like even just in my life, like the last couple years, I didn't even all this stuff was never in my plan. Starting
Mm.
this podcast, starting to create content and just getting into this space, being a part of a church plant, like this was never in any of my plans, none of my journaling, none of this,
None of it.
none of it.
I love how you say that. We plan our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and
Yeah.
we always plan what we have in our mind as the top of the top, right? Like by
Mm-hmm.
60 or 70, I want to be retired and I want to be living a good life. Man, what if I told you guys right now listening that by in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, you're gonna be doing, you're gonna be walking into the purpose that God has planned for you, and it's gonna be
Mm-hmm.
way bigger than you retiring at 60 or 70.
Yep.
So let's not put a limit on what God can do because our way of thinking is not like his way of thinking. His ways are
Mm-hmm.
way higher. So I think that it's more about saying instead of all the planning that it's probably not gonna happen, right? Like all the things that I have planned that are not gonna happen. It's more about whatever you want to do, God, whatever you want to do, whatever your will is, just do
Yeah.
it. Like I'm here and I'm no limits, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I wanted to touch on because of course how I found you was YouTube. So how did you what inspired you to become like go on YouTube, start creating content beyond what you're doing as your business? So tell us a little bit about that.
Before anything, I wanna actually thank you
Mm,
because you may not know this, but I was very, very surprised when you actually contacted me because of my YouTube. And most times, when someone does contact me, they contact me through it's because of my business, the website, or
Yeah.
other platforms. But when you told me YouTube, with life going on and clients and all of this, I had forgotten about the podcast. I forgot about YouTube. And I think it's only been like 2 months, but I had plans, right,
Yeah.
to do podcasts more. And you messaged me, and I'm like, man, if this again, it's one of those moments. If this isn't God telling me to go back into this podcast, make sure to share other people's stories. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like he's reminding me again. He's like, I know that you have big plans for the weddings, and I'm doing something, but don't forget about what I'm doing over there.
Hmm.
And uh, thank you because your yes, right? Because you were obedient and because you messaged me, it has also led me to go back and direct myself, right? Like God has allowed
Yeah.
me to direct myself back into where He has called me. So, first of all, just thank you for doing that because now I'm here again. Um, and the podcast, it just I really before I think that our stories were I never really thought about someone's story being so significant, right? That it would change someone's life. Like I feel like for a story to be significant, you have to be like a motivational speaker, right? Like you have to be someone with a platform, like a Tony Robbins, or like someone like that. Your story was like, wow, significant.
Mm.
Um, and it was until I gave my life to Christ that, and I noticed, I'm like, man, what if I were to put my story and go back way, way, way back then? My story is pretty interesting. Like I think my story, and I think that my story, God could use it to actually change someone's life. There's a creative out there somewhere that he's probably working a 9 to 5 right now, and he is so crazy just to leave that 9 to 5 and go do his own thing. And he's been praying, and my yes could be his yes, because I said yes, now he's saying yes. So I like getting people on the podcast, and this is where I guess the idea birth. It was I like getting people on the podcast because I say my story, and I say, oh, it's other people's testimonies, but our calling and our story is never for us, and it's never
Hmm.
about us. And that's where sometimes we may get mistaken. The purpose that God has over our life, it's not even about you. It's
Yeah.
about what God can use you and do through you to get to someone else, right? It's about getting those that are far from Him closer to Him, and it's about bringing those lost people into His kingdom. You know, and I thought to myself, I'm like, man, if I started a podcast right now and I started just doing testimonials, I started speaking every time God would give me an idea, how can that affect someone's life, right? Like someone may be on the verge of just letting everything go, just quitting. And they can listen, right, to maybe one of my videos, and it could drastically change their life. It could be an answered prayer that maybe they've been praying about for 5 months. And so I think just having that thought, that idea, whether it's one viewer, whether it's a million, I'm not doing it for the views. I could continue to get 30 views in my podcast, just so I could get 1,000 or 100,000. Whoever God is gonna reach, whoever He wanted to reach.
Hmm.
And I think it's having that mentality. Again, it goes back to God, let your will be done, not mine. You got me. You'll take care of me, and everything else is taken care of, you know?
Yeah, it's so
So,
true. It's all about the message, right? Your why that you want to do it, and staying true to that why on why you're pursuing podcasts or creating content, and staying true to that, and and then those followers and views will come over time. And
yeah,
the one thing that this is very cliche, but this is so true. Even if it helps change one life, right? It's all worth it.
you see cliche, but powerful,
Yeah,
you know,
it's all
because
worth it.
just go ahead.
Because people just need to hear that one sentence from you to help spark something in them. That's all
Yeah,
they need.
yeah, man. For example, you messaged me, right? But for example, you inspired me, right, to continue to do the podcast, but vice versa. I hope that because we're on here now, I hope that this inspires you to continue to step into your God-given gift and, continue to do your podcast, because you interviewing or just having conversations with people could actually, these may be answered prayers for someone. And it could be, like you say, that one person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. But I feel like still, a lot of people are creating content today. A lot of people are on social media. A lot of people are YouTube, but there's still that population of people that have something in their heart that they want to share, or they've had this idea of a podcast that they want to share, but
Yeah.
they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they have the worth to put their voice out there. And this is something I struggled with last year when starting one of my podcasts, which is like bringing the people on, sharing their stories, and I didn't believe that my voice was worth putting out there.
Something that I do at my church, now that you say that,
Mhm.
something that I do at my church, we have this thing called Team Rally.
Mm.
Uh, and what Team Rally is we rally up all the servant leaders and we get them excited for service. And I think the moral of the story is God always calls our unqualified, right? Like, and it's funny enough. Again, he sees things and he knows things that we don't. And so I remember my first time ever being called to Team Rally. Man, like, you're being asked to speak on a stage that I've never spoken on, even if it's in front of maybe 50 people. That to me was a big deal, right? And I'm like, man, like, it's just like, who am, again, it was one of those moments. God, are you sure you want me to speak? Like, you could use someone else that's way better at speaking on a platform than I am.
Mhm.
And I came to a realization. It was more about, hey, God is gonna, because God called me to this, he is not gonna let me fail. So don't worry about your voice not being powerful enough. Regardless, it's not your voice. It's not
Mhm.
you. It's God is saying through you. And it really does always go back to that same thing. So if you think that, my voice or what I've been through isn't like a life-changing story, or my voice, it can't really, really change someone's life. No, no, no. You're right. Your voice can't, but what God can use and do through you definitely can change someone's life.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Something just came to mind. It was 2015 or 16. Um, so back then I knew nothing about podcasts, and I bought myself, but I'm like, I want to share like leadership stuff. So I bought this like $20 microphone from Amazon, and I recorded my first ever podcast episode. I put it up on my old YouTube channel. It was this old one that I was using for like high school and college and stuff. And I didn't listen to it until like a couple months ago when I was
Wow.
cleaning up my old YouTube channel. And I was like, wow, I even forgot about this episode. It was on self-leadership. And I was like, wow, that's where it started, was in 2015 when I recorded that half an hour lame episode, which was
My
scripted, right?
yeah.
But that's where it started. And you don't need all the whatever it is that is on your heart, you don't need to go all out, buy all this technology or equipment. You just start from where you are, what you can do using your iPhone or phone, whatever that is, just start somewhere and start small. And I think the biggest thing for people to hear today is like your voice is needed in this world more than ever, right?
Yeah. Talk about it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's, again, it's just making sure that you don't think too little of yourself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're here, you woken up today, you have a voice, God is not done with you yet. And it's making sure that daily, you know that, and you surrender to God. And when you do surrender to Him, man, you just know from the bottom of your heart that if you're still here, God is trying to do something through you. And every time He's trying to do something through you is because He wants to reach someone else. So
Mm-hmm.
the good news there is that He still has a purpose for you to reach someone, whether it may be one person in your life for the rest of your life, or it may be 100,000 millions.
Yeah.
But like, like, it's just not putting a limit on what God can do. I think that's something that I'm learning right now. in this season of life, I think of every time I pray to God, I always pray to him, and I thank him and all that. But when I ask him for things, it's like asking him for things to up to where the I guess the capacity, right? Up to the capacity that I can reach in my life. It's like,
Yeah.
God, like, hey God, can you, maybe place me in a nice wedding here in Miami? But man, God is trying to place me in weddings maybe in Italy. Like maybe He's trying to place me in weddings in Dubai or around the world and preach his good word over there, not only in Miami or in Florida. So don't think too little of yourself. If you got a voice, God is going to use it, and he could use anyone.
Anyone. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's so good. So I wanted to go back to your faith journey a little bit.
Yeah.
What's been the most challenging for you so far throughout your faith journey? What's the most challenging for you?
You know, at least for me, I think the biggest misconception, sorry, that I've had, I think it was kind of like what we spoke about is, giving my life to God and really thinking that everything was gonna be nice, sweet, handy dandy, and it was everything was gonna be okay. And man, throughout giving my life to Jesus, I've faced some of the toughest battles in my life,
Mm,
right? And God has pulled me through every single one of them. But I remember Denise, it just came up into my mind. Denise, one of my close friends, I remember when I first received my calling, uh, she loves theology and she's very into the spirit. And she told me something that I never thought someone was going to tell me, but she was like, just know that if God has called you to this now, oh, the devil's gonna poke you in ways you've never been poked before.
mm,
Like poking seriously, he's gonna tempt you in ways and he's gonna try to pull you in ways that you have never even felt. But that's because now it's harder for him now, right? To even try to get a reach on you. And it's so true, right? Because when we step out of these doors of our house, all hell is gonna come after us. And the devil is working, he's trying to work twice as hard as God
yeah.
can, right? And I think that has been the most challenging thing for me. Although I've been on this journey with God, right, and with Christ, this isn't to scare anyone, right? Because I want to remind you guys that although the devil tries really hard and he knows the Bible better than we do, Jesus will always pull you through. Jesus is never gonna let you fall into the lies of the enemy. So I want to remind everyone that Jesus hasn't lost a battle. He never will. But it's having that mentality that, hey, you know, yes, everything is great with Jesus, and man, like I am so thankful and grateful. But it's also humbly surrendering to God and truly just letting him protect me, because when we fall back on I guess our earthly desires and the things of the world, that's when the enemy goes, oh, I got a spot here now, I could do
Mm,
something with this, I could maybe tempt him and lie to him. And so I just want to make sure that I guess what I want you guys to take out of this is, you know when you start seeing yourself slipping away, immediately, even if your fleshly desire, it goes back to the beginning, even if your fleshly desire does not want you to, get on your knees, pray to God, read your word, spend that alone time with him, because God's going to pull you right back into his arms.
mm.
If you feel yourself slipping away, it's probably because the enemy is trying to do something through you. But that's good news, because every time that the enemy is trying to pull you back, that's because God is about to spring you forward. There's breakthrough coming. That's good news.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, this has been a great conversation, Adrian. With the last couple minutes we have left, I do have some rapid fire questions, just so
Okay. I
some
love
fun
these.
questions, just so our listeners can get to know you a bit more.
Oh, I'm excited.
So
This is
cool,
what
cool.
I'm talking about. Let's go.
So how do you consume content to grow professionally and personally developing yourself?
Books.
Books,
Love
okay.
books. Read a book by Judah Smith. How's your soul?
Mm, mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, that book, I started reading it, and I thought, right, like just my journey with God was very Hey God, dude, like please, I pray to you this, but man, your soul, right? Your spirit is so deep and your soul longs for God so much. It's way more than you can even imagine. Read that book, How's Your Soul by Judah Smith. It has changed my life completely.
Awesome. Do you have another book, another recommended book?
Um, I'm reading right now. I'm reading What's Your Purpose in Life? Search that book up. And it's I love this book because instead of just being just by chapters, it's actually in 40 days.
Oh,
So it's you basically read one day, you read 3 or 4 pages, and then it goes on to the next day and the next day. So the whole point is for you not to read too much. That book is very good as well because that book is filled with daily reminders of why you're walking into your purpose. So for any of you guys that are questioning, right, your calling and your purpose, read that book because it's going to remind you. It's constantly reminding you of what God is doing through you and why you're important.
awesome. Next one is Dead or Alive. Who'd you like to have lunch with?
Oh, that's easy. My grandpa.
Okay.
My grandpa. I never met him, but
Mhm.
my parents tell me all the time that I got so much I'm just like him. And funny enough, even physically, it's a crazy. I wish I could pop up a picture here. He has the same like skinny face, he has the same mustache and everything, but besides the physicals, he was a very genuine and respectful guy. He always said hi to everyone wherever he went. People gravitated to him, right? And that's how I want to be. I want the light that Jesus has placed within me to be able to just be shown when I step into a room, and for
Mhm.
people to just gravitate towards me. So it gives Jesus the open door to use me. So definitely like my grandpa.
Awesome. Next one is what is the next thing that you would like to do on your bucket list?
I said it. I want a wedding in Italy. That's what I want to do. I want to go to Italy, and maybe listen. Maybe it's just a vision that I have for myself, but I do know I have this. It's just this discernment in my soul that Jesus wants me to do a wedding in Italy, and hopefully wherever I go, I am gonna preach the good word. But man, I really want to visit Italy. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It's called a Amalfi Coast or Amalfi Coast. Man, it's a coast in Italy, and weddings are done over there. The most beautiful weddings I have ever seen. So, God, if it's in your way, if it's in your plans, I'm here and I'm
Yeah.
ready.
I think that's where one of the Kardashians had their wedding most recently.
Oh, it's beautiful over
Yeah,
there.
it's beautiful out there. Yeah.
Everywhere, and it's for a creative. It's like dreamland. It's like
Hmm.
every time you turn, you could take a video.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
definitely, that's the next thing on my personal bucket list. Wedding
Okay.
in
Next one is actually final question is what is the best words of advice or words of wisdom that you have received so far?
I'm gonna I'm gonna keep it very simple with you guys. I've made this up, or I haven't heard no one else say it, but it's something that I live by to this day. It's having a "you say, I obey" mentality.
Mm,
And when we say "you say," we're speaking of Jesus. A lot of times Jesus, he will ask us to do these radical, crazy things, and we're like, God, there's no way that you want me to do this. But no, no, like don't be mistaken. It's God using you, right? And I think that if we're more obedient to these things that they're not in our right minds to even think about, I think that God is going to be able to do a lot through you. So I think my words of wisdom is just to be open, right? Be very open to what God is trying to do through you, because he is going to ask you to do some stuff. Hey, maybe pray for this person, or maybe this person wants you to speak to him. Maybe this person needs a hug right now, and just being open to say, God, you say I obey. Like, I'm going. So be obedient. Be obedient.
awesome. Well, Adrian, this was a great conversation. I'm glad we were able to connect and really unpack your story a little bit and share that. So thank you for saying yes, and we'll have to connect when I come out for VUCon
Yeah,
for sure, for sure.
absolutely. When you come down here,
Yeah,
man, I'm sure we'll take care of you, and it'll be fun. Regardless, we have to connect
yeah,
and just
for
speak
sure,
over more things in person. So
for
thank you,
sure.
thank you for having me. I just want to again tell you just what you're doing is truly I'm sure it's reaching the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we need. We don't need something new. We need something refreshing, and
Yeah.
so it's reaching the people that God wants it to reach. So just want to tell you to keep going, man. If this is what God has for you, He will reach the people He needs to reach. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this podcast interview with Adrian. I know it was an awesome interview that we took a deep dive into his journey of faith, and I really hope this was an encouragement to your life and that you had some awesome takeaways. And if you want to connect with Adrian and follow his YouTube channel, all the links are provided in the podcast description or on YouTube, whichever platform you're watching or listening on. And also, if this is your first time checking out Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh, thank you for tuning in. And if you really enjoyed this episode, we've had so many awesome guests on this podcast since the launch in March of 2023. We have surpassed episode 50, and now we're on 51, which is amazing. And appreciate those that have been listening from literally all across the globe. I have never imagined that this podcast would spread so widely across the globe, and thank you for those that are listening abroad, and hope this is adding value and that you're learning from the different guests that are coming onto the podcast. Again, if you want to connect with me, you can go to CameronSingh.com and feel free to connect with me on social media. You can send me an email. Feel free. Happy to connect. Happy to know more about your story, or if you want to be a guest on the podcast, happy to have a conversation on that. And if you haven't gotten a copy of my book, Navigation and Discovery, you can go today at CameronSingh.com, and it's in several formats. It's on Audible, it's on ebook, PDF copies, and also the print copies. I'd be happy to ship you a copy, or even if you want to do this book through a small group, there's a study guide that comes along with it that'll help you. And this book is really helping to share my story and my journey of navigating and discovering through my early years, my high school years. And I really hope that this book can get into the right hands. And it's been amazing to see the impact of sharing my faith journey and my journey of trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, and figuring it out, from different failures, different valleys, how to deal with even the mountaintops when you reach those mountaintops. So definitely get a copy if you haven't. It's an awesome, great, quick read as well. It's not a lengthy book, so you can go get your copy today, CameronSingh.com, and I'd be happy to, if you order a print copy, I'd be happy to send you, or if you gift this copy to someone, a personalized message to provide that encouragement into someone's life. So thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and hope this added value to you wherever you're at in your journey of life. And we'll catch you on the next episode next week. Thank you, and take care.